In this video, we're going to continue our discussion of the project charter and in particular take a look at setting performance-based goals for a process improvement project. The learning objectives for this video include how performance-based goals in a process improvement project and the goal setting that is done is fundamentally different than the goal setting that you do for individual or team or even organizational goal setting activities. We'll also take a look at the traditional approach towards creating goal statements using the SMART format and point out some of the problems that this approach has for performance-based goals. We'll then provide you with a performance-based goal, stretch goal template worksheet that you can use. And finally, we'll walk through an example using this stretch goal template. All right, we're taking a look at the project charter template that we discussed in earlier videos. And one of the fields is the performance-based metric and goal. Here's the purpose behind this. One of the best ways to paint a picture or to create alignment or to make sure everybody's on the same page is to describe the process's performance. And I always like to use a speedometer needle reference, where in current state, the performance is low, and we're hoping that in future state, performance will increase to a new higher value. Current state is about measuring what our settings are in terms of performance in the low value in the red part of the needle, and future state measurement and data collection and communication is about how much did the needle move. Our performance-based stretch goal should reflect this. Let's take a look at the SMART goal format writing technique and compare that to the template that I'm going to provide you to help with goal setting exercises for a process improvement project. All right, so I'm zoomed in on the process performance metric and goal statement in the charter. And I'll bring my team together. And when we get to the performance metric and goal statement setting, I know that frequently the SMART goal format approach is used. I love to use SMART goals when I'm crafting personal goals for myself, when I'm working with colleagues that report to me and I want to make sure that their goals are in alignment with my work group or department, or when I'm working on helping organizations develop overall strategic goal planning and goal setting activities. SMART goals are great for that. SMART is just a memory mnemonic to help you remember the elements that you should include in a well-written goal statement. The goal statement should be specific. It shouldn't be vague or written in a way that could create misinterpretation. It should be measurable. It might not be measured now, but it could be measured at some point in the future. It's definitely written in a format that we could assign data to it. It's attainable or achievable. We don't want to create goals that are outside the bounds that are the individual or the team feels is possible. That can be demotivating. And the goal needs to be relevant to the organization and to the stakeholders that are affected by it. And there needs to be a time horizon that the goal will be reached in a certain point of time. You put it all together, you get SMART goals. Like I said, I like SMART goals for personal and team and even organizational goal setting exercises. But for a process improvement project in which we're taking a look at current state to future state performance changes, I prefer a different technique. Process improvement goal statements for sure need to be specific. We don't want them to be vague. It's part of the project chartering exercise. We're trying to create focus and alignment. We're trying to use the goal statement as a way to paint this or describe this needle of performance that we want to go from low to high with. So it certainly also needs to be measurable. Now, teams will sometimes struggle with this. We don't have the data now. That'll be part of our current state analysis, is to find that data or to create a data collection plan that gets that data. So measurable. And I definitely wanted to have a time element, although the time element's going to be a little bit different. To get to this future state setting where performance is higher, this will happen after we vet possible solutions to implement. This will happen after the solutions are actually implemented. And that's way off in the future. We're starting with a process problem in which we don't know what the solution is. And so for the timing element, so that my guesses aren't just simple wild guesses, I specify that the timing should be the timing to get to the solution plan. So that's an important difference right now. Not the timing to get to the actual performance gains, but at least the timing to get to the solution implementation plan in which we're describing what it'll take to get to that higher level of performance. And we'll see examples of how that is crafted in the template that follows. Here's here's the biggest concern I have with SMART goals, because up to now, it sure looks like what I'm drawing for a process improvement goal statement looks like a SMART goal. Here's where the difference is. It's in this attainable, achievable section. Look, here's the thing. If I put an easy to obtain or achieve performance goal statement for a process improvement team, it makes it easy for the team to just point fingers at process workers inside the poorly performing process and tell them all to work a little bit harder. We call it the working harder trap. If you tell everybody to roll up their sleeves and work a little bit harder on this process, yeah, performance will go up, but it's not sustainable. We want to choose a performance value that to get to, we couldn't just tell people to work a little bit harder. Because if you just tell people to work a little bit harder, you create the possibility that the team will avoid all of the current state investigation that needs to happen where they're collecting qualitative and quantitative data. They'll be able to avoid the root cause analysis that occurs after you've collected that current state data. They'll be able to avoid the rigorous solution vetting. They'll just be able to tell folks, let's just work a little bit harder. It's not a sustainable way if we choose an easy to obtain future state value. So what I tell teams to include in a process improvement goal statement, not in other things, but in a process improvement goal statement, I want them to define a future state performance value that's impossible to reach without changing current state. So impossible in current state, impossible without changing current state. I call it a SMIT goal. What most of your management textbooks and process improvement textbooks call it is a stretch goal. Let's take a look at a template that I like to use for this stretch goal writing exercise. All right, I've just cleaned up my screen a little bit and I'm pulling this content from the Business Process Improvement Workbook. And in it, I'm describing briefly the elements that make up these stretch goals for a performance-based goal setting exercise. And I like to use this specific template where we have a description of the process. We specify what its current state metric is, where we want to move performance to in future state, and then what our time period is for either the project end date or at least the time period that it takes to get to the end of the development of the solution implementation plan. For a DMAIC project, that's the end of the I phase. And I've got a more detailed version of this template on the course materials website, also in the workbook, and I'm going to expand on it right now. All right, I've got a copy of the stretch goal template in front of you on screen. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit to make it a little bit easier to read the information. Okay, remember there are 4 fields. In the first field, we're getting a description of the process. We're giving a description of the process. Now, this is in a business brief that's 4 pages long. This is typically 1 or 2 sentences that includes process boundaries and a little bit about the process output and ideally a little bit about the process frustration if it's not clearly understood from earlier information. I'm going to use the travel reimbursement process from earlier videos. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at or understand the travel reimbursement process that we've been working with, I'd like you to go back and take a look at that video and then come back and we'll walk through creating a stretch goal statement for that travel reimbursement project. Okay, so the first field is to increase or decrease blank. Here's what you might want to put down. Okay, here's what I've got. Travel reimbursement time, which begins at form fillout and ends when the traveler receives a payment check. Here we've described what our frustration is. It's a time-based metric. We've described where beginning is at the form fillout and where it ends when the payment is received. And it also, at the end, also describes the actual output. All right. The next field is the from field, where we're going to give an estimate of current state performance. And if we don't know what that is, because frequently current state performance isn't known for a poorly performing process, we'll estimate it. Okay, so our current state estimate, if you remember in the travel reimbursement case, we had a subject matter expert who estimated that it was 2 weeks for current state. And we put that down. Now later we found out from our data collection that this actually was a value of 7 weeks. So we went back after that data was collected and updated this goal statement. Goal statements will change based upon the information that the team has. Notice that we called that out originally and we said, well, we'll validate this in our data collection. So if you've got a team that says, we don't know what it is and we just should say, let's try to improve performance by 25 or 50%, have them call out what they think current state is. We need to know where we're at today to help make sure that if changes are made in future state, that they were positive changes. So put an estimate down if you don't know the real value. The next field that we want to put in is our future state estimate. In the to field, we're going to describe where we'd like to get the needle to move to meet our customers' needs and meet the needs that our organization is hoping for this improved process. Let me give you an example. And here's what we came up with for our future state metric to move performance to 5 days or less. That again was our initial estimate at what we thought customers needed. We then found out later through voice of customer interviews and surveys that customers didn't need it that quickly. That was an arbitrary setting that the team came up with. After interviewing customers, found out that if we could get it in 14 days or less, that was what our customers' needs were. So the refined goal statement was to go from 7 weeks to 14 days or less, and this would give us some organizational benefits as well. Increased capacity, reduced effort, and I may even have asked the team later to update this with some specifics for what that capacity and reduced effort values were. But the primary metric, time-based metric, we've got it nailed. We now know what our needle of performance looks like. The final field to fill out is the when will it be completed by? And for a process improvement project, I like to specify when we'll have that solution plan ready for decision makers to make. So the value that I put down is the time we estimate that it'll take to get to the end of the improve phase for a domain-based project. And I use our rules of thumb for how we place these estimates. Usually, though, end of the improve phase and the solution implementation plan is a number that's given to us by our sponsor, by the business group that is requesting the improvement to occur. And in our case, it was the following. That became the goal statement that we used to help us as a team move forward throughout this project. It really focused our team's efforts. All right, so here's where we ended up. We started with the project charter. We got to the performance goal statement. We replaced the traditional SMART goal format with a stretch goal format that I like to call SMIT goals. We use this template that was expanded out, and the completed version looks like the following. In the end, What it did was it described where performance was at today in a low and frustrating state and where we want to move performance to in future state. It's a great focusing tool for process improvement project teams.